Well, good morning. It's Monday, January 24th, and as you can hear, I'm a little under the weather today, actually a lot under the weather. I feel terrible, but it works okay with the subject we're teaching. By the way, congratulations to Packers fans and Steelers fans. And of course, I was rooting for the Bears, so their season's over, but it was a great run. And just pick a team, Packers or Steelers, root for them, and you'll enjoy the Super Bowl. And congratulations to the Jets and Bears for fine seasons. Now let's get into the Word of God. We're in Matthew chapter 5. Seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountainside, and when he sat down, the disciples came to him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now Jesus has been teaching about the kingdom. John's been arrested, so Jesus really took over where John left off. But now he's teaching a much more substantial sermon, and he's got these huge crowds following him because he was doing all kinds of miracles and healing lots of people, something John never did. So he's got these huge crowds, and he's got them all there ready. So he goes up on a mountainside, and the crowds are all there, and it says his disciples came to him. So I guess the picture here is you got the massive crowd, and then more of his core believers probably came up closer to him, something like that. It's kind of that way in church sometimes. The more dedicated ones sit up front, and maybe the ones not so dedicated sit in the back. I'm just kind of having a little fun here. But he begins to teach them, and the style back then was to sit down and teach, as opposed to most of the styles today, which are somebody stands up and speaks. So he sits down, and he says something pretty strange right off the bat. He says, Blessed are the poor in spirit. Now, the reason I said today would be a good day to teach this is I'm a pretty good example of what it means to be poor in spirit from a physical standpoint. I am sick, and you can hear it in my voice. I just coughed. I'm not faking that. It's real. Well, to be poor in spirit means that you are spiritually sick. And Jesus said that's good. Now wait a minute. That doesn't even make any sense. It's good to be spiritually sick. It's good to be spiritually poor, to be spiritually bankrupt. Blessed, happy. That's what that word means. Happy to be spiritually poor. Yes, here's why. To come to Jesus, you have to give up everything. You have to surrender everything. You have to realize you don't have anything within yourself that he needs, and you need him completely. You can't say, I'm good enough to get into the kingdom. No, you can say, I'm so bad, please help me. That's poor in spirit. And that's the first one. If you don't get that one, you might as well not read the rest of the sermon. These build on each other. These first 8 are called the Beatitudes. Blessed are the, blessed are the, blessed are the. And we're going to do them all one at a time, one per day probably. But you got to get this one down. And as you can tell, I am kind of sick, so I'm going to cut it short, but it doesn't matter. You got the idea. You realize you're spiritually sick and you need help. You need the spiritual physician, which is Jesus. So you come to Jesus and say, I am sick. Please help me. And then you take whatever medicine he gives you, which of course is the Word of God. And whatever it says, you do. That's your prescription. Whatever it says, you do. Then you got it. That's blessed are the poor in spirit. Hey, come back tomorrow. We'll be doing blessed are those who mourn. And see you tomorrow on another edition of Take 5.